walking around naked in your living room. Yeah. Swallow it down, what a jagged little pill. It feels so good, swimming in your stomach. Wait until the dust settles. You live, you learn, you love, you learn, you cry, you learn, you lose, you learn, you bleed, you learn, you scream, you learn, you grieve, you learn, you choke, you learn, you laugh, you laugh, you choose, you learn, you pray, you learn, you ask, you learn, you live,
Well, that's how I live my life. I live my life just like that. It's frequently exciting, it's painful, it's full, it's wide open. And this song came out when I was thank you. This song came out when I was graduating from college the first time with my bachelor's and on my way to Chicago to do all of those things, to walk through caution and to get knocked out and to get back up again and to walk into situations which I probably shouldn't have, but felt somehow that I needed to for some purpose beyond myself. And so I was so happy when I was asked, what is my motivation, or to talk about motivation. I don't have time to tell you how much I am motivated by in my life here in the transportation cabinet. I live a double life as the president of a nonprofit. I have children. I have many, many things that make my life very full, and all of that motivates me. And so this title, there was a phrase that went around a long ago, what's my motivation? Some of you probably remember that. And you know, it's still a good question to ask. And so for the next few minutes, I would just like to share with you by my own experience and what motivates me. And perhaps we can, you'll see yourself. The cathedral presentation was so precise today. That brother was preaching to me. And I cry all the time, and anybody on my staff or that I've been in a meeting with knows that I can be happy, sad, glad, mad. The tears come, and I was even thinking about that yesterday because I was very pleased to be in an afternoon devotion with good friends and people who also are motivated by faith and motivated by beliefs higher than themselves, and I just broke into tears. And that was at work, and I shouldn't do that at work, but hey. I like that about myself, and you know, it just is what it is. I'm learning to be okay with that. So that was Alanis Morissette. These are the things that motivate me in my life. I am motivated by love with a capital L. I am an unabashed believer in Christ, and so I know that that saved my life and that it also allows me to live an incredibly extraordinary life. I'm not preaching. I know that there are people in here who don't believe in that, and that's cool for you, but I'm talking about what motivates me, and perhaps you can catch some of that if it's not for you. I'm motivated by love in the little sense, but not to diminish it, so that higher love is eternal. This love is what I have for my colleagues, my children, life, people. And it's funny, the gentleman who was talking, what was his name? I'm sorry, Cathedrals. Greg. Well, so he was talking about, you know, telling people that you love them. And I do that to people all the time. And sometimes they're like, okay. Sometimes they love me back. I just said goodbye to, pardon me, one of our employees who's going on to fairer skies. And that was the last word I said to him. Who knows if I'll see him again, but that's what I wanted him to know. I am motivated by pain. And pain is a great motivator. And as we get into my story, and I don't have to tell you all that, but pain is a great motivator. I hate injustice. I hate it. I hate it. And so all of my life, even from a child, when I would see things wrong or see people being mistreated, I I couldn't stand it. As a child, I had relatively little power, but I have a whole lot of power now just based on who I am and the positions and the opportunities that I've been given. And so all of my life, I fight against that. And a little bit further into my presentation, you'll see that. I love life. Having been nearly dead more times than I should have been, having known people close to me who have gone on. Life is very, very precious, and it's so gorgeous. Even on the days when I'm exhausted and just can't think that I can go on another day, this comes to mind and I can start again. I am a person I run on hope. I run on it. In my own life, it was only hope, with a capital H and a small h, that led me to where I am today. And so it is also a very great motivator. I wanted to be better. I wanted to be better for everybody, everything, all the time. Now that's very grand and it's lofty and ambitious, and I don't have enough hubris to think that I can do that for everybody or every situation, but there are some, based on my own experience and my own intrinsic internal motivations and the external motivations around me, that make me want to make it better, and it's contagious. I've known many people here and in the past who, when this is the goal, it does get better all around. I'm motivated by eternity, as I said. As was said this morning, I fully believe that this life is temporal, and so I'm trying to look ahead, particularly on the days when it's difficult to not look past the things that are in front of me, the many papers, the obligations, all of that stuff. Pain is a great motivator. I'm unashamed of my story today, and if you know my story, this comes as no surprise to you, but probably a lot of you in here do not know this story. So this was me, and this was the moment of greatest pain and the greatest relief in my life. In 2007, I was a professor, a very beloved professor at Morehead State University, because exactly as I am now, it's exactly what I poured into my students, and my classes were always full, and I was doing all this stuff on campus with other people in community, and so this was an entire shock to the community. So this great pain I had hidden from most people for about 10 years on and off, because in the middle of all of this, I was still getting amazing jobs, because the intrinsic motivation cannot be diminished by circumstances of my choosing or someone else's choosing. And I submit that that's the same for you. Whatever it is, whatever the pain is, you can use it to be better. And so this was a very humiliating moment in my life, but I would just like to say, whatever you put out comes back to you no matter the circumstance. So the day that I had to go to court for my first arraignment, I was ashamed. I'm in shackles, I'm in the orange jumpsuit facing the judge, and I hear this big commotion, I hear this big commotion behind me, and I turn around. Hundreds of my students have filed into the courtroom to support me. They were devastated. How could I do that? They were angry and all of that stuff, but they were motivated by the experiences that we had. But it didn't stop there, obviously, because I'm here now. So I went on and I went to jail. I spent 10 months, 28 days, and 12 hours in rehab. I was counting. I came back. I walked out my sentence. My record was expunged, and I began life all over again. When I came back to Morehead after rehab, I was ashamed. I was not motivated to leave my house. But one day I said, this is ridiculous. I can't live in this forever. I have to be motivated by that eternal goal and by the desire to not live in my circumstances to go forward again. And so I came home. We tried to put it all back together, my husband at the time, but it didn't work out. During that time, my career was rebuilding. I was rehired at Morehead State University, the very same university that I had to resign from, because motivation and what you put out is what you get back. So all of that was great, except that this happened. My daughter, whom some of you in this room know this story, my daughter was abducted, kidnapped by my ex-husband and taken to Mali, West Africa. So for a year and a half, I did not talk to my child. For most of that year, I didn't know whether she was alive or dead. 4 months into her abduction, I was sitting at my desk at the Morehead News. I was a newspaper reporter at the time, and a crawl screen comes across my computer that says, Mali descends into chaos. There had been a coup in this country. Rebels had literally gone into the presidential mansion, snatched the president out, knocked him on the head, and drove the country into a quasi-civil war. So what's my motivation? My motivation is life, the life of my daughter. And I wasn't going to let circumstances that I had made of my own choosing, I wasn't going to let circumstances deter me from going after her and bringing her back to me. So for 2.5 years, I fought for her. And he talk about motivation. When people see that you're motivated, they want to help. So no matter what I had done, the very same people in my community and in the state and in the nation and internationally, my record was out there. Everybody knew what had happened. But because they saw me motivated to be better, to be different, to be eternity-minded, they came along to help. So there was this groundswell of support all around for her. For 2.5 years, it wasn't just me motivated to bring her home. It was other people as well. And she came home. And not only did she come home, she came home in spectacular fashion. I don't really have time to tell you all of that, but suffice it to say, 2.5 years later, my daughter and I, my elder daughter, Riza, my 19-year-old, she was 16 at the time, we went to Mali and we made a pact. We said, either we're going to come home with Muna or we're going to die trying. And we meant that, and that's not me being grandiose or theatrical. That's what we meant, because we were motivated to bring our baby home. And so the day that we left, we came home with the assistance of the United States government. My dear Senator McConnell was on the line with the U.S. ambassador in Mali. The ambassador herself took us to the airport, escorted by U.S. Marines, put us on the plane, and sent us home. That's what motivation does when you don't allow your circumstances to define the rest of your life. So she's home now. I just saw her in The Lion King, my baby, in the Lion King play last night. That's what motivation does. Pain is a motivator. Love is a motivator. So here I am. I'm kind of rushing because I know I don't have a lot of time. So one night, in maybe April of last year, it was a Sunday evening. I was just kind of hanging out and the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but it was the now chief of staff, or the chief of staff for the transportation cabinet. He says, you don't know me, but we know you. We know your reputation. We know what you've been through. We know who you are. Would you be interested in coming to work at the transportation cabinet? But in my mind, I'm like, does he know that I was that driver? Does he know that I was that person who was driving impaired and doing all of those things that by my definition and my role, I encourage through law enforcement and public awareness to have people not do. But motivation. People are motivated to help when they see that you want to be different and that you're doing something different. Now, there's a little bit more behind that. But before I get there, pain is a great motivator. Every day that I am here, I start my day looking at the daily fatality statistics. I look at that daily fatality summary. My first couple of days here, I was encouraged, no, you can't feel that pain. You'll be ineffective in your job if you start thinking about this person died and that person died, whatever with that. I am motivated by pain. I am upset that we are tracking to be exactly where we were in 2016 with our fatalities. 834 people died in Kentucky last year. That doesn't seem like a lot, but you think about a 747 crashing once a week in Kentucky, and then you tell me whether we should be outraged or not. So I am motivated by this. This was my student when I was at Maysville Community and Technical College, on the way to rebuilding, or in the rebuild of my life. I was very blessed to go back to Morehead State, and then I got a job at MCTC. When I saw that on the news that night, Jennifer Hinton, sweet girl, smart, funny, she was working third shift at Nestle while going to school, just motivated to be more than what she was, and she lost her life. Now, this was a roadway departure. We're still kind of waiting on the circumstances there, but this is motivating to me, and I hope that it's motivating for all of us in transportation. That's why we're here. Customer service, yes, and I absolutely agree with the secretary. Customer service, but for us, customer service is keeping people alive when they travel this gorgeous state that has been so good to me and so good to so many of us. I cried at my desk this morning. When the gentleman talked about, what is it, laugh, I forget what it was, but I heard the cry part because I cry all the time, like I said, and I opened my personal email this morning before I got my day started. That's the first thing that hit me. Now, if you look at Zara, you're like, oh, she's so gorgeous. Look at those cheeks, look at those eyes. You just want to scoop her up out the screen and love on her. But let me put it in a little bit of context, talking about what pain can motivate you to do. So you know that my daughter was kidnapped for 2.5 years. It's called international parental child abduction. It wasn't going down like that for me. And as long as I have breath in my body, I will work for other parents and with other parents so they don't ever have to feel what I felt. Unfortunately, too many do. That's the context in which I am motivated today. My organization, I'm always have some sort of emblem. I'm always representing I Stand, whether in a public or a personal capacity. This is my organization. It's just me. I'm a co-founder. I Stand Parent Network, its very reason to exist is to empower parents to return their children from international parental child abduction. We have children abducted to nearly every country on this earth. These are American children. I love my country, and I believe my country can do better than this. I was at the White House about 2 weeks ago for the very first time to talk about this. We have great friends in Congress, great friends in the judiciary, but for the first time, this has escalated to the White House, and that's not something that has happened before. Why? Because myself and other parents are motivated by this pain, motivated more than that by the love for our children and for other people's children. I will never forget the day that I was dropping off my daughter at school, and Muna, her name is Muna, she's a skipper. She skips everywhere that she goes, and so she was skipping into school that morning, and all I could think about was the other parents who were not seeing their children skip into school. What do I do with that except give it everything that I have? I've been blessed with many degrees, many skills, and a way of persuasion. And I'm going to use those gifts to bring Zara home and everyone else. She's retained in South Africa, meaning that she left, the mother left with her on the intent of bringing her back, but held her there. So this is where I am today. And this is where I will be in less than 2 weeks. I Stand Parent Network is getting ready for our 4th International Parents Conference. We draw parents from many cities or many states. We've had parents come from New Zealand, Australia. We've got one coming from Brazil this time. Because this is 3 days to motivate parents that you've got to do something with this pain. You've got to do something. It's so easy to give up and to throw away, the hope that your children can come home, but that's why we exist. And so over the next course of these 3 days, we'll be motivated to knock on doors on Capitol Hill. You're going to help us bring our children home. We would like for you to do it in a gracious way, but we require it because we're Americans and we're parents, and that's what you need to do. And we'll say it much more diplomatically than that if we have to. But when it comes down to it, they've got to come home, and there's no other reason. As a matter of fact, our phrase is, I stand until all children come home. My very favorite part, we're going to be motivated on Friday to take this fight directly to the nations. We'll be marching down Embassy Row, stopping right now. We've got 4 embassies on our route. Japan, India, Malta, I can't think of the other ones right quick, but we are motivated for nations to return our children home. And so that's pretty much the end of my presentation. I just wanted to share a couple things with you in closing. So what does this have to do with transportation? What does this have to do with leadership? What does this have to do with motivation? It all has everything to do with that. Because whatever it is that you feel deeply about, the thing that has hurt you the most, the things that has invigorated you and inspired and enthralled you the most, that's your purpose. Like he was saying early this morning, that's your purpose. You don't have to wonder what it is. It's very near to you, near as your own breath. And so for me, if you take the passion, or if you can imagine the passion that you probably feel from me in this moment, double that for how I feel about highway safety, and triple that for how I feel about I Stand and the cause to return children home. And that's my motivation. Thank you.